Okay, so we left off at the transfer disclosure statement, the real estate transfer disclosure statement. And so we are now going to proceed with the seller property questionnaire. What I would like to do today is I would like to take questions at the end. So if you have a question when I'm doing something, write it down. Or if you have a super good memory, try to remember it and ask at the end of the form. Because last time I didn't get through enough of this. So this form is something that every seller needs to fill out unless you are a foreclosed property, so that it's a bank owned. If it's a probate, or if it's a trustee account where the owners of the property have actually died, are no longer living, or are incapable of answering this. Like if they have Alzheimer's or a paralysis of some sort where they cannot talk anymore. Or cannot fill out a paper. So there are certain circumstances that you wouldn't use it, but otherwise 99% of the time you will use this form. And here at the first page, note to seller, purpose to tell the buyer about known material or significant items affecting the value or desirability of the property and help to eliminate misunderstandings about the condition of the property. So this is they need to tell you, seller needs to tell the buyer everything they know about the property, good or bad. It's just to let them know. It's not good or bad. It's just, here, this is everything you know about my property, and I hope you still want to buy it type thing. And they will want to buy it, at least in this market, they'll want to buy it. Something that you do not consider material or significant may be perceived differently by a buyer. Think about what you would want to know if you were buying the property today. Read the questions carefully and take your time. If you do not understand how to answer a question or want to disclose or how to make a disclosure in response to a question, whether on this form or on the TDS, you should consult a real estate attorney in California of your choosing. A broker cannot answer questions for you or advise you on legal sufficiency of any answer or disclosure you provide. Like, I don't necessarily give them the answer, but I'll try to talk them through it when I'm doing the questions down below. And then it's note to buyer, purpose to give you more information about known material, facts, significant items. And then from this one, the buyer could complete a BMI. We went over that last week, or 3 weeks ago, I think it's been now. And seller can only disclose what they actually know. Seller may not know all material or significant items. And the seller disclosures are not a substitute for your own investigation. So seller aware, for each statement below, answer the question, are you seller aware of? By checking either yes or no, explain any yes items in the space provided or attach an additional comment in section 18. So right, there's another area you can write things in. And so this one here, page 1, I'm going to quick go to another form. So we see we have A through K. And on this one, we have A through K. They are the exact same page. This one is the exempt seller disclosure. So when it is a probate, when it is a bank-owned property, when it is a trustee sale, or for some reason the actual owner does not have to fill out this or a TDS, the seller property questionnaire, they would fill out this one. This one becomes mandatory because these are mandatory questions in the state of California. They're the exact same questions as you find on this one. Exact same questions. And I'm going to go over all of these because these are pretty important. Within the last 3 years, death of an occupant of the property upon the property. So that's not just in the house, it's on the property. An order from a government health official identifying the property as being contaminated by methamphetamine. The release of illegal controlled substances on or below the property, whether the property is located in or adjacent to an industrial use zone, whether the property is affected by a nuisance created by an industrial use zone, whether the property is located within 1 mile of a former federal or state ordinance location, which is like a military training purpose for military training purposes. I think there's a, oh, wow, it may contain explosive munitions. Wow. Whether the property is a condominium or located in a planned unit development or other common interest subdivision, insurance claims affecting the property within the past 5 years, matters affecting the title of the property, material facts or defects affecting the property not otherwise disclosed to the buyer, and plumbing fixtures on the property that are not compliant plumbing fixtures as defined in Civil Code section 1101.3. Look it up. So you can look up Civil Code section 10, that number, and you will find out what it is. I want you guys to do that. I want you to be inquisitive. That's the, if you go to all the work of looking it up, you will remember it better. Don't think there's anything else on that page I want to discuss. Repairs and alterations. This is any alterations, modifications, replacements, improvements, remodeling, or material repairs on the property, including those resulting from home warranty claims. Any alterations, modifications, replacements, and remodeling, and repairs to the property done for the purpose of energy or water efficiency improvement or renewal energy. Ongoing or reoccurring maintenance on the property, for example, drain or sewer clean out, tree or pest control service. Any part of the property being painted in the last 12 months. This is important because usually people paint just before it goes on the market, and we don't know what they just painted over. We don't know if there was any water spots, like that would be the big one in the ceiling, is that they painted over some wet stains that are now dried up. Because you would want to know if the roof is leaking or has leaked in the past. Whether the property was built before 1978, that's important because of lead-based paint. If yes, were any renovations such as sanding, cutting, demolition of lead-based paint surfaces started or completed? If yes, to these questions, were such renovations done in compliance with the Environmental Protection Agency lead-based paint renovation rule? So if this becomes whether the property was built before 1978, if this is a no, then these don't have to be answered. If the letter E was a yes, then these would have to be answered. Whenever you get a yes answer, you then have to explain it down below. It doesn't even matter if the question itself is self-explanatory. You have to just restate it down below because that's what it said here. Yes or no, explain any yes answers in the space provided or attached additional thing. We now have structural system and appliances. Defects in any of the following: heating, air conditioning, electrical, plumbing, polybutylene pipes. Look that up. They were mostly used in Washington State. Water, sewer, waste disposal, septic system, sump pumps, on and on and on. So any defects in those items. The leasing of any of the following on or serving the property. The solar system is at least, water softener system, water purifying, alarm system, propane tank. You get out in the country and you get a lot of propane tanks. That's how they heat their houses. That's how they get the gas to their houses. Solar systems, they're oftentimes leased. If you see this on, if you see that this is yes, and then they explain down here, solar system, you jump on the solar system lease, or even if it's owned right away, because it has to be transferred over into the buyer's name. And the solar system people, companies, they're not very quick. So you don't want to hold up an escrow or your contingency removal because you didn't jump on solar systems early enough. They're not easy to work with. They don't always call you back. They seem to want to transfer you to somebody else who can help you better. Just run into a lot of walls with solar systems companies. Disaster relief, insurance, and civil settlement. Financial relief or assistance, insurance or settlement sought or received from any federal, state, local, or private agencies, insurers or private party by past or present owners of the property due to any actual or alleged damage to the property arising from flood, earthquake, fire, or other disaster, or occurrence or defects, whether or not any money was received was actually used to make the repairs. So we're going through this every summer with our fires. It seems like, anyway, for the last few years. And we know an earthquake is coming. We just don't know when. And so there'll be a lot of disaster relief help with the fires and earthquakes, and possible flooding if any dams break, water related and mold issues. So it's very important for the seller to answer these questions, even if they don't want to. They'll say the buyer won't buy it, that kind of thing. They have to let the buyer know, because especially mold makes people sick. It makes them very sick. It gets in their lungs. And it's a very tough thing to get rid of. You have to do a lot of renovation to the property by the proper contractor so that they know how to deal with mold. And it's expensive for the seller, but it has to, you can't live in a house with mold. Pets, animals, and pests. Pets honor in the property. So anytime that they have lived there or that they know of, even if there's no pet alive or there anymore, they need to say yes. If there had been a pet on the property, then they can explain it down below. Problems with livestock, wildlife, insects, or pests honor in the property. Like, I know where I live, we have a gopher issue. Oh my goodness. And then there's also termites, like maybe some houses, termites love them more than any other house. It's just, they just are attracted to some, and it has to do with sun and moisture. They like warm and they like wet. Past or present odors, urine, feces, discoloration, stain, spots, damages in the property due to any of the above. Past or present treatment or eradication of pests or odors, or repair of damage due to any of the above. So these are just yes and no questions, and then answer all the yeses. Boundaries, access, and property used by others. We have surveys, easements, encroachments, and boundary disputes. Right, sometimes fences are not put up quite right and they're on somebody else's property. That becomes a boundary dispute. Sometimes there are encroachments or easements where people need to use the owner's, the one driveway that takes you to the back. Maybe their house is in the back and that one driveway is for both houses. That would be an easement. Can't think of what an encroachment would be. Maybe we'll come up with something at the end on an encroachment. I don't know. We'll ask at the end. Use or access to the property of any part of it or by anyone other than you, with or without permission, for any purpose, including but not limited to using or maintaining roads, driveways, or other forms of ingress and egress, or other travel or drainage. Right. This all has to do with using part of the property owned by somebody else, or you own the property and somebody else is using it. It works both ways. And use of neighboring property by you. Landscape, pool, and spa. So you got to talk about the trees and the plants and vegetation, if it's diseased or infected. The sprinkler system, these are all yes and no's. And if yes, then you have to answer these questions. Is there a pool heater on the property? If yes, again, you have to answer these questions. Past or present defects, leaks, cracks, repairs, or other problems with the sprinklers. My goodness, just about every sprinkler system I know has had problems. The pool, spa, waterfalls, ponds, streams, drainage, or other water-related decor, including any ancillary equipment. So it's just pretty straightforward. It's just the sellers don't like to read these things sometimes. They get tired of this form. Condominium and common interest developments and other subdivisions. And this is only if applicable. So if it's not, you can actually leave this one blank because it's only if applicable. Any pending or proposed due increases. We've got a real issue going on in Meadowbrook right now, which is here in Fremont on Paseo Padre and Thornton. Everybody in there should be answering this as a yes. Any declaration or restriction of architectural committee that has authority over improvements. That is probably going to be a yes if it's a condominium or a townhouse, or maybe even a duet. Any improvements made on or to the property without the required approval of the architectural committee or inconsistent with the declaration of restrictions of agricultural committee requirements. So condos, in a condo, you do not own your walls. You do not own the land you sit on. So if you do anything to your walls, like knock out a wall or something in a condo, you cannot do that without the approval of the committee, the architectural committee. Now, townhouses can be PUDs where you actually own your walls and you do own your land. So it's important to find out if your complex is a PUD or if it's a condominium. I lived in a PUD. We could knock out walls. We could rearrange our kitchens. We could do whatever we wanted to inside the house. And then the part of the land we owned, we could do without architectural approval, unless it was written in your CC&Rs or HOA docs. Like I changed out my windows. That was in the HOA docs saying, you cannot change out your windows without our approval. So you make sure you get the approval from them on certain things, and you need to know what they are. You need to read, buyer needs to read those HOA docs and CC&Rs. They're so important. Title ownership, liens, and legal claims. Any other person or entity on title, leases, options, or claims affecting or relating to the title, past or present pending, threatening lawsuits, settlements, mediations, arbitrations, so on and so forth. Any private transfer tax triggered by a sale of the property in favor of a private parties, charitable organizations, interest-based groups, or other person or entity. Any PACE liens. These were loans given by mortgage companies for putting in environmental things for your property. It was for I'm trying to think of when you would take one out, maybe for a solar system. I'm not sure how many modifications. Not sure what all it covered at all. You can easily look up these things, and it's easy to find. You just type in PACE lien or HERO or whatever that is, SCIP, and you'll find out exactly what they do. The cost of any alteration or modification, replacement, improvement, remodel, or material repair of the property being paid by an assessment on the property bill. Here we get to neighborhood. This is always a tricky one because it's the same question as on the TDS, but asked a little differently. So are there any neighborhood noises? Are there any odors in the neighborhood? Like, I know Milpitas has an odor. It smells like the bay. Parts of Milpitas does. But people get used to these things and then they don't smell them or hear them anymore. Is there, what else would there be? Not limited to the following: neighbors, traffic, parking congestion, airplanes, all this stuff. And I make sure that when I'm looking at this, like after they filled it out, if I'm not sitting there with them, that this corresponds with the TDS. They should really be pretty much about the same. I'm not sure if TDS goes into underground pipelines and cell towers and things like that, but they should almost mirror each other. And this should never be a no, unless they live in the most quiet neighborhood that you can imagine. Right. Government. How many more pages do I have? Oh, this is the last one. Good. Ongoing or contemplated eminent domains. Condemnation, annexation, or changing in zoning or general plan that applies to or could affect the property. I think the biggest one is eminent domain, where they want to take your property because they're going to widen the road, and they can take a portion of your front yard. for sure. But they still have to leave you with enough yard so that you meet the standard requirements for the city. Existence or pendency of any rent control. Boy, this is going to be a big one, especially if California goes into a rent control state. And there is rent control definitely in Hayward, Oakland, Berkeley. Don't know where else, but there are other cities also that would have rent control. San Francisco. Existing or contemplated building or use moratoria that apply to or could affect the property. Current or proposed bonds, assessments, fees, proposed construction, any new construction coming up, that kind of thing that isn't showing yet, but you've been notified. Existing or proposed government requirements affecting the property. Any protected habitat for plants, trees, animals, insects, whether the property is historically designated or falls within the existing or proposed historic district, and any water surcharges or penalties being imposed by a public or private water supplier. And then down here, it's reports, inspections, disclosures, warranties, maintenance recommendations, estimates, all these things that you have received before it goes on the market. So if you did some inspections, you would write it down here: pest, general, roof, pools, chimney, whatever you did. That's the most common one for this one. And then any occupant or properties smoking any substance, this is not just smoking cigarettes, any substance on or in the property, any past or present known material facts or other significant items affecting the value or desirability of the property. So let's say that somebody starts typing and they run out of space. This will automatically take you to a text overflow addendum. And so then you just keep right on typing. It'll be another form, but it automatically attaches itself to this. So does anybody have any questions?
I got a couple comments.
Okay.
So you ask about encroachments. That's where any part of your property is actually sitting on their land. That's an encroachment.
Oh, like a tree.
Or even somebody, maybe you build a storage shed and half of it was on their property side. Any part of your property that's on their property.
Thanks.
The other thing is it says, are you, the seller, aware of?
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of these, they may not even know what the heck they're talking about. And so they're not necessarily aware of it. And that's why
it's only what you're aware of. Right.
Huh?
Right. It's only what they're aware of.
That's correct. So they could answer no and have something actually going on, but they were not aware of it. Mm-hmm. And then that becomes an issue. I ended up in small claims court once. We sued a seller because they didn't disclose a defect, which was obvious. And the judge asked him, were you aware of that? He says, no. He says, well, he's not aware of it, so he's off the hook. we lost.
Any questions or from anybody else? Don, I did a darn good job. Done?
Yes,
okay.
Pat.
Oh,
you did a good job.
Oh, okay.
No, you did a good job.
Thank you. Thank you.
Let's move on.
Yep. Okay, so we're going to go down. We did the other, let me see here. We did the exempt seller disclosure. That was at page 1 of this one. One page, first page of this. Verification of property condition. I do want to go through this because there's an important statement on it. And up here, so I will go over those in a second. If they're not going to do a property verification at the end, which is 5 days before closing, you would check this. If they waive that right to go do their final inspection, you check this: buyer waives the right to conduct a final inspection.
Well, Pat, hey, Pat.
Yeah.
Can you hear us? Question.
Yeah.
So if the seller isn't aware of the defects, how do you prevent that? How do you prevent going to small claims court? If the seller isn't aware of something, how do you as a buyer prevent that?
Well, how do you prevent what? The small claims court or?
Yeah, like for example, if a seller says, "Oh, they're not aware of a certain thing in the property," that's obvious. So how do you, as
Uh-huh.
the buyer's agent and the buyer, prevent that or go about that?
I
Like
don't
you,
know.
I
I
do.
just, oh,
Pat, we had a situation several years ago where the seller was asked directly with, they had a room addition and they were asked, does it leak? And the seller said, no, everything's fine.
okay.
After it closed escrow, it rained and it was like a waterfall coming in. And obviously there was something going on. And then the neighbor says, we talked to the neighbor and the neighbor said, yeah, Frank knew about that all along. He kept complaining about it. That's
Yeah.
where you could get somebody. You got to have proof that they knew.
right, okay.
That's the issue.
Yeah, and neighbors will tell you anything you want to know. And I tell my sellers that just beware that if the neighbors know, the next owner is going to know that, you were
Basically,
aware of
that's
this.
the neighbors then, right?
Okay, so this is an important paragraph here. The purpose of this inspection is to satisfy the buyer regarding the condition of the property. Buyer and seller understand and agree that unless otherwise agreed in a prior contractual agreement between buyer and seller, a final inspection is not a contingency of the purchase and sale, and the inspection or waiver is not intended in any way to alter the contractual obligation of the seller regarding the condition of the property to be delivered to the buyer at possession date. That means that you can't stop the close of escrow because something wasn't done. It actually ends up going to, if it doesn't get done in the amount of time that you agree upon or agreed upon, you can go take them to small claims court when it's over. That's hopefully it's less than $10,000, because once you hit over 10,000, it can't go to small claims court anymore. Okay, so that's really important. This is just to go in there and take a look, and then if the seller hasn't done something, make them aware of it, and the agent and the seller, and it needs to be gotten done, not even negotiated at this point. It's whoever, it was all negotiated in the contract to begin with, and they have to abide by the rules. That was my reason for going to this verification of property. Otherwise, it's a pretty simple form. You would just write in that is the property in the same condition as when you saw it and wrote an offer and the offer was accepted. That's what that's all about. This one here, seller's affidavit of non-foreign status. So look at this. Use a separate form for each transferor. That's for each seller. Got it? So if there's 3 sellers, you need 3 of these forms.
Every person on title.
Correct. To me, that's 3 sellers or 2 sellers or people on title. So the transferor's name, and down here, it is for individual transferors. I am not a non-resident alien for purposes of U.S. income taxation. I am not a non-resident alien, means you are a resident. Under F, for corporations, partnerships, limited liability companies, trust, and estate transferors. The transferor is not a foreign corporation, foreign partnership, foreign limited liability company, foreign trust, foreign estate, or those terms defined in the Internal Revenue Service Code and income tax regulations. So this one would get checked if you are one of these. This one gets checked if you are illegal. E gets checked if you are a legal citizen. F gets checked if you're one of these. And then it says qualified substitute. The qualified substitute is going to get the information that you're going to need. And so this does not get filled out unless this box is checked. This box isn't checked, seller doesn't need to fill this out. And the reason you have this is if they're a foreign investor, a foreign seller, a person who is not a legal citizen of the United States but owns property here, they're going to owe some taxes. They're going to owe more taxes than the resident person. And this form it's up to the buyer to make sure the seller completes this form or that qualified substitute, because if they don't, and this is not done, and the title company doesn't do it, buyer is now responsible to pay any of those taxes that will be due. So buyers, make sure this is going to get done by the title company, because that's who seems to do it in, at least in Northern California. This one, then their name would, you'd print their name and you would print their title over here. They would sign, buyer signs, dates. Page 2 is wonderful. It explains page 1. It tells you what foreign persons define, non-resident aliens, green card. You've got your people from people that live in Guam. You've got so Guam and the U.S. Virgin Islands. It just explains everything on the front. I highly recommend you, before you ever take a listing, to read this. This is really good information, and I think it'll help you explain it to your client, your seller. And as a buyer, make sure you get this or the qualified substitute. Qualified substitute would come in the closing packet. Any questions?
What if it's a trust, Pat?
Okay,
who
well,
would-
a trust
who
where
would fill
people
it
are
out?
living, a
Yeah.
trust where people are living. This gets number F because it says trust.
But who
So-
would sign? Just the trustee, right?
The trust is owned by the trustees, and the trustees are, if they're still alive, they are,
They would
owners.
each have to sign?
they each have to do one.
Okay.
Yep. Each person has to do their own form.
Okay. This one.
So now we're getting into the representative capacity disclosures. There's one for the buyer and there's one for the seller. So seeing as how we're doing buyers, mostly buyers in this disclosure class, we'll do it first. They're pretty similar. So it's not like I'm going to be teaching you two different forms here. So, and it actually says buyer and it has a B behind it. That's how you know which one it is. This is a disclosure of one or more of the following: purchase agreement, buyer representation agreement, or other agreements specified below, in which buyer 1, buyer 2, whatever, is identified as buyer. If a trust, identify buyer as the trustee of the trust, or simplified trust names such as John Doe, co-trustee, Jane Doe, co-trustee, or the Doe Revocable Family Trust. Full name of a trust should be identified in 1A below. If power of attorney, insert principal's name as buyer. So it tells you exactly what to write here. And you have no idea how many times Renee and I see the buyer's name and nothing else when it tells you exactly what to write. Exactly. So let's say it's a trust, you would mark that. And then you would put in the name of the trust. So we'll say it would be, let's say it's the Doe Revocable Family Trust dated December 31st, 2020. That would all go in here if that's the name of the trust. If the date is not part of the name, then you would leave the date off. So it's exactly what the name of the trust is. That entity buyer is a corporation, limited liability, partnership. I put other in here because there's always S Corp. It's what oftentimes realtors they open an S Corp for their money to go into. It saves some tax dollars. Power of attorney. Power of attorneys are used when the sellers are not functioning in a way that they can do their own sale. Like, again, it would be like an Alzheimer's victim or someone who is very ill, alcoholics, severe alcoholics, unless you can catch them when they're not drinking, they can't sign for themselves. And it's one of those things where if you think someone's drunk or has been drinking too much or under the influence of a drug, You are not supposed to be taking a listing or writing offers for them because they're not in their, what do I want to say, in their sanity mind. So be aware of that. I had a buyer, I had a seller. She was a drunk. I maybe told you this in my last disclosure class. She was drunk from the half hour after she got up until she passed out sometime during the day. And she would call me totally drunk, telling me awful things. Never telling me I was a bad person, but just in general saying weird things. She let animals die from not feeding them, from malnutrition. She was the most severe I've ever seen for an alcoholic. You cannot let them sign for themselves. And so therefore they have to have a power of attorney. And she did. One of her daughters was her power of attorney for her property. And then there's the estate, conservatorship, guardianship. These need to be identified. They are identified in the papers the estate papers that you get from the seller. This is when the people have died. And it is in probate. There would be a case number, you have to put it down. And then down here, it would be the buyer's, you print the buyer's name, their signature, and then their title. That would go here and here also. Then at the time of sale, the buyer, oh, I'm sorry, this is, I keep thinking I'm doing this for the seller's point of view and it's a buyer's, but it's all the same. Anyway, the buyer, time of sale, buyer and the seller are parties to a purchase agreement dated known as that, and then they sign his name. The seller would sign his name. This is on the buyer representation agreement, because I think Heidi is teaching you all to do buyer representation agreements. You would then have to have this form also for if the buyer is in a trust, a corporation or whatever. And then this would be for assignment of agreement. If the buyer was going to sign over to, so buyers can get into contract and then assign it to somebody else. And that happens a lot in corporation sales transactions, where maybe the owner goes into contract and now it's, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm going to let my assistant do it or somebody else do it. And he'll assign it over, she'll assign it over to somebody else. And then this form would be used in that case. Any questions on this one? This was for the buyer. Okay, representation for the seller. Same thing. Again, it tells you exactly how to use the names if it's in a trust. These are all the same. Seller signs here. At the time of the listing, you would put these in. And then at the time of sale, buyer goes in here, or time of other agreement. Pretty simple form. Used to be one of the most difficult forms we had, and CAR changed it and made it a beautiful form.
I have a question.
Sure.
Here in the seller, you're showing the seller as the trustee,
Yes.
the seller's name as trustee. On the buyer's form, you had buyer one, buyer two.
Because I didn't put a name in. I should have put trustee behind it.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. Thank
I
you.
will do that right now for anything future.
I was just wondering if that was the case.
No, it was just something I just simply overlooked.
Okay, thank you, Pat.
But that'll get me correct for the next time if I do this ever again. It takes a lot of preparation, guys. I want to show you this. This is Alameda County disclosure. I would say California has a lot of counties, and I don't know what the percentage would be, but I'll bet it's at least 75% of them have a county disclosure of some sort. Sometimes it's a purchase agreement from their county purchase agreement. I want to show you this. Look at this right there, Meadowbrook Village in Fremont. They're so screwed up over there that they actually got put into the county disclosure. Livermore regulations, Berkeley regulations, Alameda City ordinances of disclosure, sidewalk repair. Look at all these things from the cities in Alameda County. This is just an incredible, this is better than the statewide buyer seller advisory. It is full of good information. So let's go down to the sidewalk repair program, number 6, page 16. Is that 16? Oh, here we go. So we have sidewalk repair program. This program currently only applies to single family residence units in the following communities. Look at this: Ashland, Castro Valley, Fairmont, Cherrywood, Hayward, San Lorenzo, and I know it also applies to Oakland, and there was possibly a separate one up there for Oakland. Then we have the Alameda City ordinances. And you can soft story ordinance. I just put this into command for in Oakland. If you do anything in Oakland, they now have a soft story ordinance, but I see the city of Alameda may also have one. Just wonderful information. Gas shutoff valves. How is a bedroom defined?
What does Meadowbrook say?
Oh,
Page 18.
is that what it was? Okay.
Yeah.
Page 18. Oakland regulations. Oh, Oakland, lots of regulations.
Yeah.
City of Fremont. I'll let you guys read it. I'll enlarge it.
When was this updated, Pat?
This one, the Meadowbrook one has been in here for a while. Let me see when it was updated.
That would be on the first page.
Oh, it's on the first, not the last.
Well, I don't know.
May
Yes, I'm guessing the first
2019.
page.
May 2019. That's 2 years ago.
Yeah, yeah. Very interesting.
Oh, this is really an interesting form. Don't overlook this form, guys. It's every form is so important to read. This one just has page after page of incredible information. Let's see, what have we got here? I'm
No,
just
Pat.
about done. Yeah.
We only have 16 people in the class today.
Oh,
But
do we?
every time I take your class on disclosures or anything like, I always learn something new.
This right here, didn't you?
Huh?
This right
Yeah,
here, this
yeah.
metal. Yep.
Meadowbrook, I didn't know that was in there.
Yeah, it's been in here for a long time. I knew it had been. City of Alameda, a quick go over this. This is no longer this is like the disclosure class has kind of ended.
And the sidewalks in some of the San Lorenzo area.
Now, San Lorenzo is interesting because it's not a city.
No, it's just Alameda County.
Yeah, it's in the county. Was there something there?
Well, you said, well, it talked about sidewalks in those
Oh, yeah.
areas.
I can't.
I didn't realize it applied to them. Page 16 it was,
Oh, it was back on page 16.
yeah. Ashland,
Oh, Ashland. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, that's kind of like North Hayward,
yeah.
isn't it? Yeah.
So I never saw that before. I didn't realize it was in there for Ashland.
You know, I didn't realize it was either until I prepared for this class. Yes. I knew Meadowbrook was in there, but I did not know, I had not read the sidewalk thing prior because the sidewalk thing is, well, it's 2019, so it's a couple of years.
I knew Castro Valley was, but that's fairly recent, Castro Valley, within the last 2 years.
Yeah, right. Yeah, 2019, May 2019.
Yeah.
So I'm having difficulty here opening some of these. Can't get that one open. Here, Castro Valley Purchase Agreement Addendum.
Yeah.
So these are,
What's the date on that?
these talk about sewer laterals. Castro Valley has a sewer lateral. And what else do they have? Looks like that one is the only one that they have.
The
in their
reason they
purchase
have the
agreement.
sewer laterals, they are East Bay Mud.
Yes,
East Bay, yeah, the water district.
There was another one. Let's see what else we have here. Tenant, estoppel, tenant, residential lease, seller, buyer. I don't really have anything else I plan to go over because they're not disclosures. So if anybody has anything they want to add, this is your time to do it. If
Thank
not,
you for what you do, Pat. Appreciate it.
you're welcome. Okay, that's it, guys.
Thank you so much, Pat.
Yeah, much less time this time, less than an
Yeah.
hour.
All right.
Okay.
When are you doing the, again? Just kidding.
I don't, well, Steve's gonna be doing the new purchase contract, so you can take a look at that in CAR.
Really?
That'll make you scream and run away
When is it getting effective? The new
this
new
year.
contract?
Yeah, I attended a CAR class online on Zoom and, well, it was with Gov Hutchinson. And he
Right.
mentioned the CAR and I think it's coming, or the residential purchase, and he said this year.
It was supposed to be last year because of COVID. They
Correct.
delayed it.
I think, right. I think because of
It's
COVID, they
16
didn't.
pages. Yeah.
Yeah, it
16
takes,
pages,
it's gonna
right?
take a lot of training.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, this is it. Thank you guys for coming.
Thank
And I
you.
hope you learned a lot.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Pat.
Uh-huh.